have the equation of an ellipse in general form. But the problem with general form is you're not able to identify the center, which is your H and K, and you're not able to identify your A and B. Okay? So we must change this from general to standard form. And when I say standard form, I'm talking about the ones written on the whiteboard. Okay? So the first step to do that is to group your X's and your Y's and move the constant to the other side. DeAndre has already pointed out to us that the constant has already been moved to the other side. So it's been done for us. All we have to do is group the X's and the Y's. Now, there's only one term with a Y, so there's nothing really to group with it. You just write it. And then equals 495. The constant was already moved to the right side, so you don't have to do anything with it. The next step is to factor out the number with the x squared and the y squared. So I'm going to factor out the 9. And when I do that, it leaves what? Minus 6x, correct? Remember, when you factor out a number, you're dividing it out. 9x squared divided by 9 is 1x squared. Negative 54x divided by 9 is negative 6x. Now, since you only have one term with a y, you don't have to do anything to it. Kind of like with parabolas, if you only had one term, you just left it. Okay, so now I'm ready to start the actual completing the square process. I'm going to add in my blanks. So x squared minus 6x plus blank, and then plus 64y squared. The reason we can't add a blank over here is because think about it. The way that we get a blank is by doing the b value divided by 2 squared, correct? Well, over here, was there a b value? No. So that's why we don't do anything to it. So now we have 495 plus 1 blank, because all we added was 1 blank over here. To fill in the blanks, you do b divided by 2 squared. So for the x trinomial, what is the b? Negative 6 divided by 2 is? And negative 3 squared is 9. Do we also add 9 to this side? No. What do we add to this side? 81. Remember, you have to multiply that number by the outside number. 9 times 9 is 81. Okay? Alright, so next, you're going to do the bubble method. You're going to factor that trinomial into 2 factors. X times x will make the x squared. And what numbers multiply to 9 and add to negative 6? Negative 3 and negative 3. And remember, they have to match because in the very next step, you're going to write it once and square it. Now, plus 64y squared equals what? 576, right. Okay, so now you're going to, instead of writing that twice, since it's the same thing, write it once and square it. And then just continue bringing down the 64y squared. Now, with ellipses, they always equal what? 1. So to make that equal 1, right, divide it by itself, but that means you have to divide that by 576 and that by 576. Okay, so now let's start reducing. What is 9 over 576 reduced to? 1 over 64. What does 64 over 576 reduce to? 1 over 9. Okay? So now we have 1 times x minus 3 squared, which we don't really have to write the 1, correct? We can just write x minus 3 squared over 64, and then plus 1y squared, but do we really need to write the 1 beside the y squared? No, so y squared over 9, and then equals 576 over 576, which is 1. Now, doesn't that look like standard form, like the ones that are on the whiteboard? And now that it's in standard form, can't we easily identify the center, which is your H and K, and the A and the B value? Okay, what is the H? 3. What's the K? Right, because there was nothing over here with the Y, so it must have been Y minus 0. Which one's bigger, A or B? A. So A is obviously going to come from the 64, but before it got plugged in, what was it? 8. And then b will come from 9. Before it was a 3. Here we go. Number 1. The first thing I'm supposed to do is what?
Move the constant.
Move the constant and group. We'll do all of that in the same steps. So 9x squared minus 36x go together. And then the y squared plus the 4y go together. And then that 31 moves over. And since it was positive, to move it over, you had to subtract it, so it became negative. Then the next step is factor out the number with the x squared and y squared. So that would be 9 for the x squared. And when you factor it out, what's left?
X squared minus 34.
Minus 4x. Because 9 times x squared is 9x squared. 9 times negative 4x is negative 36, right? Now, is there a number beside y squared to factor out? No, so it's ready. You don't have to factor anything out. What's the next step? Add in the blanks. So 9 continues to come down, and then we have x squared minus 4x plus blank, and then plus, even though there was nothing factored out, we have a b this time. Okay, that 4 is the b, so we're going to put a blank over here as well. And that means we need to add 2 blanks to this side. How do you determine what goes in the blanks? Right, b over 2 squared. So for the x trinomial, what is the b value? Divided by 2? Negative 2 squared, 4. But over here it will be a 36, because 4 times 9 is 36. What's the b for the y trinomial? 4. Divided by 2? Squared. And then it didn't have a number factored out, so it will just be 4 added over here. Okay, so now in the next step, I'm going to factor each of them. Continue bringing down the 9. And I'm going to factor both trinomials. And on the right, I'll just combine like terms. What does that become? 9. When you add all that together, it becomes a 9. Okay, so over here I need to factor x times x for x squared, and what numbers multiply to 4 and add to negative 4? Negative 2 and negative 2. What numbers multiply to positive 4 and add to positive 4? Positive 2 and positive 2. So now I write them both as a binomial squared. Okay, what do I do next? Right, now we need this to equal 1, because the equation of an ellipse always equals 1. So divide it by 9 so that that will become a 1, but you divide this by 9 and this by 9. Well, what's 9 over 9? 1. So technically, you don't have to write either of them, but I think it will be beneficial to you to see that 1 there on the bottom. That way you'll know that that's either the a or the b value, and most likely the b since it's such a small number, right? And then plus y plus 2 squared over 9. So now that we have it written in standard form, what is our h and k? Right. And what's our a value? No. 3, because 3 squared made the 9. And what's the b value? 1, because 1 squared would have made 1 right there. Okay, let's try one more together. Do 4? 2? Okay, can I erase this one, or is anybody still copying? Well, get out scratch paper. Okay, number 2. We need to group the x's and the y's and move the constant. So that'll be 9x squared, and that's the only x term, plus 25y squared minus 50y equals positive 200, because it gets moved over. X squared, since it's the only one, since it's the only term with an x, it's just going to continue coming down. You're not going to have to fool with it till the end. But over here, we need to factor out that 25. And when you factor out a 25, what is remaining inside? Minus 2y. Okay, so now we have 9x squared plus 25 factor this. Oh, I skipped a step. What did I skip?
The blank.
I forgot to put the blank. 50 divided by 25 is 2.
Oh.
And then equals 200 plus blank. Okay, so now that I have the blank there, how do I fill it in? Correct. B is divided by 2. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. But over here, it'll be a 25, because you have to multiply that 1 by the 25 outside. So now this becomes 9x squared plus 25. And now at this point, I can factor that using the bubble method. And then the right side becomes 225. So I need y times y. And what numbers multiply to 1 and add to negative 2? Negative 1 and negative 1. Okay, and then what am I going to do? Well, before I do that, don't I need to write it as a binomial squared? Write that y minus 1 one time and square it. And now we're ready to equal the equation to 1, so we divide everything by 225 so that it will equal 1 at the end. And so, what does 9 over 225 reduce to? Yes, it does. 1 over 25. What does 25 over 225 reduce to? 1 over 9. So when you write your final answer, there's no need to write this 1 beside the x squared. So just x squared on top, 25 on bottom, plus y minus 1 squared on top, and 9 on bottom. And now we have it in standard form. So now we're ready to identify the center, which is your h and your k, and we're ready to identify the a and the b. Okay, what is your h? What's your k? What's your a? And your b? Right. Well, a is always the larger number, so a would have been right here. And remember, this has been squared in the formula. So to get 25, it was 5 squared. And then b is always your smaller number. To get a 9, they must have taken a b value of 3 and squared it. It will be. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to be working on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to be calling you up to tell you what you made on your quiz. Now, as soon as I'm done calling you up, I'm going to go over the quiz. And I'm going to send those of you that didn't take it to another room to take it. So whatever you don't finish of this will turn into your homework, okay? You got it?